The details of my life are quite inconsequential. My father was a relentlessly self-improving boulangerie owner from Belgium with low-grade narcolepsy and a penchant for buggery. My mother was a 15-year-old French prostitute named Chloe with webbed feet.
We're going to be doing something a little bit differently than some of my other documentary-style videos talking about a subject. We're making an Iceberg discussing Ian Foote. Now, if you've never seen an Iceberg video, at least the way that I'm going to do it is at the very top, we're going to have some more common knowledge, some more Weenie Hut Jr. topics discussing Ian Foote that most people probably can pick up off of him, watching a couple videos and seeing a few things about him. And then we're going to get into some more of the cultish understandings. And it should be important to know that, at least in my opinion, Ian Foote is mentally deranged, and it's hard to trust anything that he says about anything. So I'm going to try and put the pieces together. I'm going to try and present them in a format that might seem a little bit disjointed, but at this point, there hasn't really been anybody discussing all of the events, everything that makes up this man. And the reason why this video is titled Making a Horrorcow, How to Make a Horrorcow, is because I think we are at the precipice of seeing this man do something absolutely horrid and then having to pick up all the pieces and try and understand how we got here. And I think that's what the point of my video should be. Lay out everything that he has talked about up until this point, which is about 8 hours worth of content. A lot has been lost, but we'll discuss what we have and then try and understand what makes this man tick. So let's get into it. Ian has discussed that he had a very rough upbringing. His parents were not good to him. He didn't trust his siblings. He mentioned that he left his home at 17 and went about into the world. He is currently 49 years old and lives in Toronto.
I left home when I was 17 years old. I'm a 49-year-old man.
However, he hates Toronto and really wants to move back to the countryside, live in the wilderness. He's talked about his interest in growing crops and plants and the whole shebang.
I don't like this society. I don't like this city. I don't like these people. I don't like them.
And he used to live in Halifax, but had to move to Toronto to follow his estranged daughter. And when he did live in Halifax, he lived in a trailer with one of his ex-wives. Obviously, this is throwing a bunch of information at you initially. We'll break down all of these people in different tiers as we go along. Ian hates both of his siblings. He has claimed that his brother tried to attack him when he went over to help his brother move. His speculation was that his brother viewed himself as being superior over Ian because he was going to go to school to become a doctor.
The two of us went over to my brother's house and we were helping him move his furniture to his new apartment. Just, buddies helping each other out. And my brother, Mr. I'm going to be a doctor and go to med school, and now I'm superior to you. I spent my whole life thinking that you were superior to me, but now I'm superior to you. I didn't go through life comparing myself to other people. But he attacked me. And of course, I overpowered him and I pinned him to the ground. Freeze like a statue or I will tear out your eye. And he froze like a statue. I had no intention of tearing out his eye. I just wanted him to freeze like a statue so I could leave.
I think this is sort of an initial moment that I want you to keep in the back of your head of Ian not either telling stories incorrectly on purpose, trying to deceive us, or he is honestly imagining these stories that never actually happened. When he had issues moving around to all these different places, he entrusted his sister to keep a bunch of memories, paintings, letters, artwork of his daughter because he didn't have a permanent location to hold them on. And he has great disdain for his sister because his sister is everything that he views wrong with modern day women, where she's independent, doesn't have any children, doesn't have any ambition, and he just doesn't like that aspect of her life and therefore doesn't really respect her.
I never hated my sister. I loved my sister. I wasn't particularly close to my sister after we became adults. I wasn't particularly close to her. Those were really the things that I wanted to keep. I had a photo book of my daughter, and I had some paintings of my daughter, a few little mementos that I wanted to hold on to. And I asked my sister if she would hold them for me. And I asked her if I could use her home as a mailing address to route my mail to until I found a new place to settle down. A childless, postmenopausal woman with no children, no grandchildren. That's it. And she did not like that.
Eventually, he comes around to fully hating his brother because his brother decided to pursue his medical career and his studies over getting a paycheck to help keep his family going or something.
They ended up getting divorced, and she left with his son because he didn't want to give up on becoming a medical doctor. He didn't want to give up on his dreams. He didn't want to go and get a job with his master's degree and support his wife and kids.
It's a bit perplexing because I feel like if you are in a situation, I have family that has been doctors, and I know it can get tight for a little bit, but the payoff obviously is massive. So it's a bit perplexing as to why his brother, trying to better himself and was going through the steps of it, why it would destroy his entire family, why it would lead Ian to hate him. I feel like there's just further aspects that were left out. I know you guys might not believe this, but Ian also hates his parents. I know, that's crazy, coming out of left field. It mostly stems from his father consistently cheated on his mother when he was growing up. He even was witnessing this. He was taken along on some of these escapade trips with his father.
I remember when my father was cheating on my mother. I remember when my mother found out that my father was cheating on my mother and went to stay with their family for a while to figure out what the two were going to do next. And I remember my father talking to me man to man because he had no one else to talk to. I was definitely not older than 15. My father attacked me with a deadly weapon. My father belongs in prison.
He explained that his mother was a very joyful and happy person before she found out that he cheated on her. And when she did find out about that, she was completely devastated, understandably. In the past, she used to take care of babies in hospitals and even planned on taking a minimum wage job in order to get pregnant and have more children. And her father kind of ripped that away from her. And she sort of took out all that anger and resentment that she had built up on his father onto him.
She's manipulative. She has this path. She tries to walk you down a path, or she'll ask you leading questions to try to get you to this place. And she's all super sweet about everything. And you can clearly see what she's trying to do. You can clearly see that this is I'm trying to lead you to say this, to see this, to acknowledge this. I hate my mother. Say to me, "You're just like your father. You're just like your father. With those eyes and that, you're just like your father."
Including saying that repeatedly that he was just like his father, which pissed him off. The most accessible social media platform for Ian is his YouTube. He has almost 9,000 subscribers. He usually posts on there pretty frequently throughout the week. He's had it since the beginning of this year, roughly, but only has videos archived from roughly the past 2 months. And there's a lot lost to time, but that's where you get the crux of your information. The YouTube Schizophrenic is a YouTuber who did a 4-hour plus long live stream talking about Ian over a year ago. It mostly reinforces everything that I'm going to talk about today, but it is further proof that Ian has existed and posted on different platforms, including this one, for an extended amount of time. So there is definitely information that has slipped through the cracks. The consistencies with Ian's character get pretty confusing once you start to talk about relationships, how he interacts with women, because he talks about how he was always on the prowl, always on the hunt to try and sleep with another woman, to try and have some sort of relationship with somebody that he found attractive. But he also tried to masquerade as being some sort of family man, a guy who was only interested in one person, who just wanted to create a family unit.
I didn't want to date women who were ready to have kids. Even though I was ready to have kids, I wanted to have kids. I didn't want to date women that were ready to have kids and wanted to have kids. Like, to find someone that loves me for the right reason, someone loves me for I'm a good person, to show people that I'm a good person. And then if people saw, people in the community saw that I was a good person and that I cared about them, then I'd be able to have all these things that I want, and I'd be able to get a good woman. And it's just like,
we'll get to his troubled relationships a little bit down the line, but I think it's important to note, at least at this point, that Ian doesn't really follow what he believes. I think that he takes a lot of his self-pity from how poor his life is and amplifies it and justifies it to himself, and that's why we end up with where he is now. He's talked about several times about previous relationships or flings that he's had with people. Once again, he's an unreliable source, so it's hard to tell exactly what story's real, what story's not. I think this story in particular, the one where he talks about having a huge dong and this girl loves him so much, everybody's so interested in him, is something that he's made up in his imagination. I don't view it as being true.
Dick pics that had been sent to her that day. And she thought it was hysterical because my dick was bigger than all the dicks in all the pictures.
He doesn't want an easy lay. He wants to connect with somebody. But I don't know. In my understanding, the connections are crisscrossing all over the place. I just can't honestly get to what he's trying to figure out. I think he's trying to put on this manly persona while honestly at the end of the day just wanting to have one wife that loves him forever and doesn't betray him.
I can't even get women to treat me with respect. I find talking about sex really, really turns me off. Let's skip all the food and the partying and let's just go straight back home, and I'm going to do this to you and I'm going to do that to you and I'm going to do this to you. Can I do this to you? Asking, talking about it, just it all turns me off.
He also confirms that he basically has nothing to offer to these women, which is 100% true. I mean, you can look at him. He looks like an elf from Lord of the Rings, and I'm sure initially when you start watching this video, you're like, wow, he looks like Cyrax. Wow, he looks like this person. Wow, he looks like that person, and that's probably true. He does have all those issues. He's almost 50 years old. He has no front teeth. I mean, there's a lot of things that I feel like are going against him in terms of the dating pool.
Asking me, what do I have to offer these women? The answer's nothing. The answer's nothing. I'm almost 50 years old, and I have never once in my entire life forgiven a single person for anything, ever.
He also explains that his biggest gripe with women, the number one thing that makes him hate them the most, is when they're prideful, or they have pride. He didn't really get into the intricacies of what that actually meant. Does that mean that he doesn't like them when they have an interest or a hobby in something? When they're proud of, I don't know, insert whatever, maybe they like painting. Does he not like that? It's a bit perplexing.
The most unattractive quality that a woman can have. Pride. Pride. There is nothing uglier There's no uglier quality that a woman can have than pride.
I think he was more trying to go after the fact that he doesn't like women that view themselves as completely equal to him. I think he wants to always be viewed as the alpha. He's even called himself the alpha a couple times throughout his channel's history, as cringe as that is. He claims that he's good at keeping secrets, but I'm going to call BS on that instantly because I went through 8 hours of content talking about his entire, well, I can't even say it's his entire life, but what he has revealed on the internet. And I'm sure a lot of these people that he's talked about, whether or not the stories are true, do not actually want to have their stories portrayed on a hateful, vindictive man's channel. That's probably not really up a common person's alleyway.
One of the things I was proud of about myself was that I could keep a secret. That we could go somewhere and we could talk privately and you could say things to me and you could open up to me and I wouldn't judge you and I wouldn't gossip about you.
He also explains that he prefers to be a quiet man who has somebody that talk to him, mostly to try and quell the loud voices that are constantly telling him how trivial he is, how little he has to offer in life, and so he likes to have somebody that can fill that void for him.
I like to listen. I've got all this stuff in my head that I don't want to think about and I don't want to talk about, and it's nice to just sit across the table from some cute woman with high energy and a positive attitude and just listen to her run her mouth off like a little bird.
Like most content creators on the platform, he absolutely hates his viewers. Can't stand them. I wouldn't know what that's like, but he doesn't even view them as human at this point.
Your feelings don't affect me at all. Your feelings don't affect me at all. I don't need you to approve of me or to disapprove of me. Your feelings don't affect me. I don't see you as human beings anymore.
His life is full of misery, so he views his channel and his other platforms as a way to release his hatred, release his misery onto other people. It's basically misery loves company, you know. He wants to tear everybody down with him to try and make everybody else feel what he feels. It's a very melodramatic, sad view of life, in my opinion.
But the only reason this channel exists is because I'm in misery and pain and lonely and poor. I don't have any desire to communicate to you. I don't have any desire. I'm just miserable and depressed and lonely. This all comes from a place of hate. All these videos, they all come from hate. And I will never love anybody again. I will never respect anybody again. I will feel nothing but hatred for the rest of my life. I want you to know that I hate you.
And obviously, and you know, this can be relatable to almost anybody, trolls absolutely infuriate him. He cannot stand trolls.
And I took the time to write a carefully worded reply. I said, listen, I didn't put the cops on blast because I didn't want to make it personal. I didn't want to put them on defense.
He views YouTube very similarly to how I feel like my parents would view YouTube, where he'll try and write out long form messages to a troll saying that he sucks or is lying about something, when the best path is to just ignore it. Ian will respond. He also has this delusional state that he exists in where he thinks that his comments can be deleted by the trolls on his own channel.
Because these trolls left comments on my channel, they can delete my replies to their comments. That happens to me quite a bit. People leave comments on my channel and I compose very carefully worded precise, honest, expressive responses to their comments, and they delete my responses because they're able to delete replies to their comments, at which point I ban them from my channel.
It is convoluted and obviously not true. It's not possible. I can write whatever I want in my comment section right now, and none of you can delete it. I can delete any of your comments. I won't. So it's confusing. And I think what's actually happening, and I see people comment this on my channel a lot, where the YouTube automated system will block a comment and you'll think that it got deleted or removed, but really it was just the automated system was doing it. So that's what I think is happening to good old Ian, but he's being tricked by the ghosts. Ian has had more jobs than I think anybody I've ever seen in my entire life. We'll get into some more of the specifics a little bit later. Some of the more important ones to really hone in on is Ian claims to be an IT whiz. Maybe he's making Temple OS, who really knows, but he claims that he has worked and interacted with the higher-ups at Pfizer and Shopify and aerospace companies, a bunch of these different things. Basically, he is a top 0.01% IT software engineer to ever exist on the planet, yet he lives in this dingy apartment. He has no front teeth, he has no money, and his life has been destroyed. So I'll let you guys try and figure out whether or not that's actually real. And on the other hand, he also, as I mentioned previously, has interest in farming and growing crops and all that, and has claimed to have helped build community gardens and for-profit farms in urban areas. I don't know. Unsurprisingly, Ian really struggles with connecting with people and making friends.
I've never been the kind of person that enjoys going out to a party or an event or a concert or anything like that. Getting to know people and talking to people and making friends and socialize. And I never really connected to people. Not really. I've always been I never really had very many friends. Now I don't have any friends. Being famous and popular, that would have been nice if I'd have been able to form human connections. If I'd have been able to make some money out of it or form some human connections, but I didn't.
He's had basically no human connections since his third wife left him, and has sort of just been left in the state to toil, or as he likes to call it, ruminate about his thoughts, because he doesn't have anybody to interact with.
I've been sleeping alone for more than 10 years. I wanted to find somebody that I was ready to commit to for the rest of my life and have kids.
He's talked about a lot of stories of how he just doesn't connect with normal people, where he can't just stand around and talk to people. He has to be doing something. He views those people that can just stand around, have a beer, and talk as being lazy and worthless, and he has to actually go be productive with his life. It's this elitist mindset that he puts on others that he doesn't see in himself, that is very perplexing at times.
I don't have any self-respect. I'm miserable. I've been continuously miserable for years, and I know that this is my fate. I don't have any friends. I don't have any friends.
He also just doesn't view the importance of improving himself, because what's the point? What is he trying to accomplish? He's already viewed himself as being in the gutter and that there's nothing better out there for him, so he makes no effort to improve.
In my room and clean myself up and go to the gym. For what? For what? I needed people in my life. I needed people in my life. I needed a support network.
how probably 95% of people found out about Ian is through his semi-viral video, You Framed Me, which has almost 200,000 views at this point, which discusses the fallout with a former fling, which we're going to get to at the very end. It's one of the tier 3 sub type of shenanigans that he's gotten into, but it has generated a lot of traction for him, and that's where a lot of people probably know him from.
I hate women. I hate them. I loved women. Someone cheerful and high energy and impulsive with such crazy ideas. I loved that. Why don't I get to have that? I worked really hard. I made all the right sacrifices. Why do I have to put up with it? Why couldn't I have that?
Ian definitely takes a very political aspect of his channel. There are personal stories that he discusses, but they're always shrouded in this veil of his political mindset, or at least his cultural or civil mindset in the world that he exists. I don't want to say the word society. So I'm not going to get into all of it. I don't care. I'm not going to sit here and spout political opinions about what's right and what's wrong. I'll let the audience figure that out. That's for you guys to decide. But he hates women. He hates Canada. He can't stand the LGBT. He hates Justin Trudeau. And he hates the police. I feel like that's the most basic bullet points that we can get to in discussion with his politics without getting this channel and getting this video absolutely blown away. So we're going to leave it at that.
Is that what a man looks like?
Congrats everybody, we made it to tier 2. In tier 2 we're going to discuss some lesser known things. We'll have to patch some things together, and we're starting off with his LinkedIn. Now, his LinkedIn has a lot of his job history that we mentioned. There's not a lot of interesting aspects of it. You get the cute little picture of him on there, but that's mostly it. There's not a lot going on with his LinkedIn. He hasn't posted in a long time. His interests, his likes are very outdated, so it seems like he's kind of moved on from it. Leaping Lemur made a video discussing Ian, which included Ian's Facebook, which he basically just posts a bunch of bizarre topics and discussions, very akin to what he's doing to his YouTube channel, but just in text form. So, if you're curious about that, you can go watch Lemur's video to get more information. As it should be no surprise, Ian takes a very primal perspective on life. His main objective, I feel like, was to get married, have kids, have your kids get married, and rinse and repeat over and over again.
That, as far as I'm concerned, the purpose of life is to find a member of the opposite sex, get married, stay loyal, care for each other selflessly, procreate, have children, love each other, love your children, nurture and support them until they become mature adults, and continue to support them until they manage to find a mate of the opposite sex, commit to each other, procreate, be loyal, care for each other selflessly, and perpetuate the cycle. And then someday, their reward will be that they're still with the person that they got married to when they were young, and they're surrounded by all their children and their grandchildren who they are still on positive relationships with. That's what it means to be successful in life.
I'm sure he wished that his family loved him. I'm sure he wished he could have that connection. I'm sure he wished he would have grandchildren that could come and fill up his house, but that's not what he ends up with. Now, we mentioned a couple times that Ian has a daughter. Her name is Caris. To my understanding, it wasn't ever spelled out. I think it's Caris, but that's what we're going to run with. And he is convinced that she has been manipulated against him by his family.
I would have been able to prove to her that she was lied to if she had dropped her frame, dropped her walls, and been honest with me. And the fact that she refused to allow me to defend myself means that she walks through the world right now with her head full of lies.
And it's kind of understandable because of his, I don't know, traditional philosophy viewpoint on the roles of men and women, how they should behave, how he wants them to behave in his family. He basically didn't want her to get an education or go and get a job or go out in the world and experience things. The only things that were important to him in his mind was that she got married and have kids. So it's not very surprising that this would alienate somebody. Even if that was her objective, I feel like there has to be a deeper connection between you and your daughter than, hey, where are my grandkids? Oh my god, you read a book? Ah, you witch. We're going to take you down to the gallows later today.
I didn't want her to fucking have an education and a career. I didn't want her to be independent. I didn't want her to have adventures while she was young. I really, really, really wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. It would be one of those relationships where I say, how come you don't visit me more often? And when are you going to get married? And when are you going to give me grandchildren?
He's talked about trying to reconnect with her on multiple occasions, but he basically says that she never communicates back to him, while at the same time he also says that he has no idea what she looks like, which confuses me because if he's finding her profile or whatever and is trying to talk to her, you can see what she looks like right there. It's a bit confusing to me, but we'll let that one slide.
I managed to establish contact with my daughter. In January of 2020, I found her on Facebook. I managed to establish connection with her. I reached out to her, I told her that I loved her and I missed her, and I gave her my phone number and I tried to get her to talk to me. And she pushed me away. I don't love my daughter at all anymore. I don't care about her. Someone left a comment on one of my videos here. You're selfish, you don't care about your daughter or what she wants. My daughter will not communicate. I don't even know what she looks like.
And he tried to defend himself and say that he was a great father who took care of her and looked out for her, especially the times that he would have her for a week and, you know, they'd play outside and they'd shoot squirt guns at each other and they'd throw snowballs and he'd make her meals and stuff. And when she was gone, he would go back to his hedonistic lifestyle of trying to go on dating apps to bang random ladies around Toronto. Sounds like a killer lifestyle.
2 super soaker guns with hot water. And we went outside in the snow and we ran around shooting each other with water pistols. We were on the little deck that was attached to the trailer. Squirt me, Daddy! How dare you say that I didn't care about you? How dare you say I never loved you? How dare you say such things?
He mentions that he even got her sword fighting lessons. I didn't know that was a thing. You could just go and be a samurai somewhere. I was unaware of that. Like, I'm aware of what fencing is. I get that. But there's actual sword teaching lessons in places. I really missed out on that. I had a really sucky childhood, it sounds like.
Paid for you to learn to fight with a sword. I wanted to see you fight with a sword. I cared.
Basically, he's gotten to this point that everything in his life surrounding her has been so demoralizing that he no longer cares what happens to her. I can't say or even put in the clips of some of the things that he said, but imagine the worst things that somebody could do to your daughter. He said he would advocate for it and be okay with it if it happened to her. So you fill in the blanks there. He's just a really reprehensible person who has never tried to adjust his worldview to anybody in order to try and understand and connect with somebody. That doesn't mean that you have to change. That doesn't mean you have to become a new person. That just means you have to stop being a stubborn old bitch so that you can have friendships and families with people.
I don't care if you hurt her. Hurt her as much as you want.
I know, that's just a crazy scenario. And at the end of the day, he just views her as a failed daughter who just never picked up and never listened to anything that he said.
Please don't make me come and live with you in Halifax, Daddy. Please, Daddy. My friends are in Toronto. I want to be close to my friends. Please don't force me to live in Halifax with you, Daddy.
His wife basically manipulated and turned everything against him, and in order to get back against him, his ex-wife would tell his daughter things that she knew he would hate. I don't know. It seems like a very skewed viewpoint of somebody that never really got to have the connections with her and is trying to fill in the blanks himself. While he might not look like it, he claims that he was a 4-time provincial champion of wrestling in high school.
I wasn't just a guy who joined the wrestling team. I was 4-time provincial fucking champion.
But at the end of the day, he only looks back with sadness and is all glum about it because his dad was too busy going out and banging hookers and whoever else and cheating on his mom that he never got to watch him fight, which has carried on for 30 plus years since that time.
They put me in a pool with more than 40 men, and I was the toughest! Twice! That's interesting! Why did they give a shit? Why did they want to come and see me fight?
Incidentally, I think he sounds like Macho Man Randy Savage whenever he starts to spurg out.
Why did they give a shit? Why did they want to come and see me fight?
When he was married and lived in Halifax, he claimed that he had a huge workshop with servers and spaceships and other scientific shit that I definitely believe he 100% had.
I remember when I split up with Sharon. It was like I had all of these projects, all these things I was working on. I was growing my own food. I was made my own 3D printer from scratch. I had computer clusters. I had servers in the cloud. I had tools, all this stuff that I was working on.
I can tell, because of the state that he's living in now, he obviously was able to liquidate all those assets and get a sweet apartment to live in. On top of that, he said that he even took time out of his day to build his own 3D printer from scratch. Man, Ian is just so talented. He's done so much more with his life than I could ever dream of.
But I was lonely, and I didn't care about it. I'm sitting there, all this space, all the tools, all my projects are spread out in front of me, and I just didn't care.
This section gets kind of convoluted, and I feel like even myself trying to write out a script to describe exactly what happened here, I feel like I'm missing bits and bombs. I feel like he's telling things that aren't in the correct order or mentioning the wrong people. So we're just going to go based off of what he has said. He said that he has 3 ex-wives, 2 of which cheated on him, and he portrays them as being very vindictive.
I've had 3 common law wives. The only one that didn't cheat on me and call the police on me was the first. She didn't want to be with me anymore, but she didn't have the strength to tell me that she didn't want to be with me anymore. So she wanted to hurt me as badly as she possibly could. And she knew that cheating on me with him would hurt me more than anything else that she could do. And that was why she did it.
One of his wives named Sharon had an eating disorder and lost that weight, and then proceeded to run a program online which he says that he helped build the IT software infrastructure in order to do this, where she collaborated with other obese women with eating disorders and helped them out, and that she lived in squalor until he showed up to come save the day. And at the same time, during this time period, he said that he was making all of his money from MTV.
My last common law wife, her name was Sharon. When I met her, she was like struggling to make ends meet. She was working as an independent graphic designer, and she was running a recovery group for people with eating disorders to try to help them to build up each other's egos and build up each other's confidence and make each other feel good about themselves so that they could become healthy and have healthy relationships with their body and stop starving themselves to death. She's concerned about the fact that her partner was infested with fleas and she didn't have enough money to pay her rent. She was concerned about the fact that she wasn't going to be able to afford to keep her server going. And that all these women, these lonely women with eating disorders and low self-esteem, would end up dying if they didn't have this support network that she built. You want to know what the horrible part is? The horrible part is that if she wasn't thin, I wouldn't have dated her. Sharon was a painter. When she met me and she became my doormat housewife, it was like before she had to struggle to try to find clients and make money as a graphic designer, and now she doesn't have to anymore. Sharon came into my life and left my life, and I was working for MTV at that point. My daughter was gone. I'm single. I've lost my third common law wife. My kid's gone. I'm lonely. My relationship with my family completely disintegrated.
Which I don't think lines up because I haven't seen MTV mentioned anywhere but this one moment. It's not on any of his other platforms. So I don't know. It's confusing, but he likes to think he's the white knight that pulled the damsel out of distress and saved her. She no longer has to live in such squalor. Now, another one of his wives named Selena also cheated on him, and it was with her boss. Now, she was an immigrant from Australia, and when they separated, he continued to sponsor her and her mother, allowing her to stay in the country. I don't know why. It's a bit mind-boggling for a dude that holds everything so deeply inside of his heart that he's just like, whatever, dude, that just works out for me. It's all good.
I'll put in extra hours. I'll do some overtime. Make sure that we both have furniture for both of our apartments, and we both have first and last month's rent. That we're both set up with dignity and respect, and we're not desperate and are in dire straits or fighting or any of that shit. Like, tell me what you want to do. Because we've been bad for a long time, and I want to keep going like this. But I want to fix it. But if you don't want to fix it with me, then I want to end it, because I don't want to keep going like this. And she's like, oh, I want to work on it, I want to fix it, all this sort of stuff. I had to sign papers sponsoring Selena to stay in Canada. Otherwise, they would have deported her.
He also claims that they signed a document which outlined how they would split parenting for their daughter. I think his daughter Caris is the daughter of Selena. I think so. It's hard to get this family tree right. He never mentions, at least to my understanding, who exactly the mother is of Caris. So we're going to run with Selena. And they had a court-ordered thing saying which days they would get. It seemed like it was a week-on, week-off type of situation. He claims that she breached it, and when he went to go pick her up one time, his mother or her mother took Caris back home, but she wasn't supposed to. So he called the cops, and the cops sided with her, and he was all frazzled about it. And I think this is sort of where his disdain for police begins.
I know with certainty that one of the people that's been stalking me on the internet, Selena, was off sleeping with her boss in the call center while I was working a high-paying, prestigious IT job, paying for our nice apartment in the nice part of town, paying for my daughter to go to daycare, picking her up from daycare, taking her home, caring for her. I was basically a single father, paying all the bills. I was at Selena's house. She's inside with the boss that she was, and her mother who had come over from Australia. My daughter was in there, and I told the police. She violated a court order. She kidnapped my daughter. She does not have the legal right to take my daughter from daycare. My daughter's supposed to be in my custody. And the cops were there, and they said, just wait outside. We're going to go inside. We're going to scope out the situation. We're going to talk to them, and we'll come back out and talk to you. They went into her apartment. They came back outside, and they said, your daughter's safe. She's with her mother. We're not going to get your daughter back.
And in one of the videos, he has it titled as Sarah, but I don't know who Sarah is because I don't recall him telling any stories about Sarah. I remember him talking about Sharon and Selena. I know these are a lot of names I'm throwing out there. It's all suffice to say that he had 3 wives, 2 of them cheated on him. He did nothing wrong. He was the perfect husband. Everything was all their fault. Everything that has fallen apart since then is because of them. And there's a mystery woman out there who may or may not be Sarah. Like any good level 100 pit boss, Ian loves money. And he tells a story about taking advantage of poor people during some unspecified disaster.
I cared about the money. It was always about the money. It was always about the money. There are a lot of people out there that hate me for trying to make money off the disaster, for trying to take advantage of people during a disaster and trying to make money off them, calling me a piece of shit and all this stuff. I was powerful. I had money, style, control. I knew what was going on around me. I was in control of my social environment.
Which, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could try and correlate, but he doesn't give any dates or times or locations. So I can't just go look up disasters in Canada and see what it was related to. So, I don't know. Maybe he was price gouging somebody, selling server space out of his trailer in Halifax. He worked as an IT consultant at Clearwater Foods and has made several references towards them, including multiple rants about issues he had while working there.
I was designing the infrastructure, the command and control system for Clearwater Foods.
He told a story about when he was in high school or had recently graduated from high school that he went mountain climbing in some desert in Canada and fell.
While I was climbing a shale cliff and I fell 40 feet and I damaged my ankle and I broken the little balls that sits between the bones and the toes of my right foot. And I crawled back through the sand several kilometers, and I spent several weeks on crutches.
I'm sure there's a desert somewhere out there. I don't know if Ian was coming along to it. More than likely, he probably fell on some gravel driveway somewhere and wanted to make up a good excuse for it. Ian mentions that he has gotten help with anger management and has gone to therapy for it before.
If I just quietly walk away, if I don't show any anger, I control my temper, and I say, you know what, you're garbage. But I don't say you're garbage. I just walk away. But that's what you have to do. My anger management counselor helped me to see that when people have these battle of wills with me, and they win these battle of wills, that's the sign. They don't care about me.
Personally, this is a saturated content opinion alert. Watch out. I think this might have been court ordered. I don't think that Ian comes off as the type of person that would go and seek help for something like this. So that's my personal opinion. So the reason that he ended up in Toronto was to get closer to his daughter. And the reason why he had to get closer to his daughter was because apparently Selena was trying to move to Vancouver initially and took him to court in order to do that. and he won the court case, but then she did another lawsuit to take her to Toronto, and that's why he went bankrupt, and he was unable to pay his taxes as a freelancer.
Tremendous financial pressure. I ended up going bankrupt. I couldn't pay my taxes. I had been working as a consultant. I had a bunch of money I had been paid gross. And I had the money for the tax man set aside. And I didn't expect to be dragged into this legal battle. And she wanted to leave to go to Vancouver. And I fought her in court. I gave a ton of money and I won. And then she appealed. And simultaneously started a second court case to move to Toronto instead. So now instead of it being over and I'm victorious, now I've got 2 court cases instead of 1.
I don't know if that ever got resolved. Maybe he just admitted to another crime on camera, tax fraud. I know big man upstairs, he has to get his chuck, so that might be a bad thing. But he follows it up with saying that he cleared the bankruptcy, baby, because he was a level 10,000 mogul genius businessman who was able to turn his life around. And look at how successful his life truly is nowadays.
In the space of a few short months, I cleared my bankruptcy, started 2 companies, landed a job as a consultant, making $65 an hour, got a car on the road, and I was ready to get a place to live. And I was under so much stress.
He says that he really enjoys the arts, painting, reading, poetry, and music, one of which being playing the harmonica.
I was going to join a band, pick up my harmonica, make music, not with any expectation that there would be a reward of any kind, but just to do it, just to have some friends to hang out with.
Which I think is a perfect adaptation for some nomad train riding man such as Ian himself. Ian has had a lot of run-ins with the police, allegedly. Who knows? Maybe these events happened, maybe they didn't. We're going to go off of his word. Now, I'm very grateful that I live in the United States of America, baby, because even though YouTube can choose to censor me and take down my content and whatever, there's no thought police yet, and I can't go to jail for saying something online yet. Now, he lives in Canada, so he claims that because of some of the things that he said, and he said some awful, horrible things that, once again, I can't put online, that the police have been sent to him on multiple occasions to talk to him about things.
The cops showed up on my door last night. Second time this year that's happened. Why did they show up at my door? Because of YouTube.
One such occasion was when his ex-wife said that he breached visitation contract or something and showed up to his job somewhere. But I was always confused because he always talked about how his job positions were so great because he could work from wherever he wanted to, so he never went to an office. But in this particular story, he is in an office. So maybe this was when he was younger. I don't know. The story doesn't line up for me personally.
Cops showed up at my work, and the receptionist tells me that the police are here to talk to me. And I'm like, okay. I walk over, and I see the 2 police officers, and I'm like, can we go outside for a cigarette? I'll talk to you, but I don't want to talk to you in front of them in my workplace. And they're like, that's fine. So we go outside, and I light a smoke. I'm like, so what is this about? Why are you guys here? And they said, I think you know why we're here. And I said, I don't know why you're here. Is this something to do with my baby mama? Is it my ex? I don't know. Why are you here? Don't play games with me. Why are you here? And they're like, oh, he really doesn't know why we're here. Because you went to see this woman named Michelle, and she doesn't want to see you. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I understand. I explained the circumstances. I told the cops everything. I was honest with them. She told me that she loses her temper, and I thought, knowing this about her, I'd give her some time to cool down and go and talk to her like a man. And she had another man there, and that's it. So like, okay, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not a bad guy. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything immoral. You're not a scumbag. You're not a stalker. You're not a creep. You're not a piece of shit. But she talked to us, And we're telling you not to talk to her anymore.
Recently, he has talked about how cops have come to his apartment and tried to bust down his door for a wellness check, where the landlord let them inside and he was arrested and sent to a psychiatrist to do mental evaluations.
So the cops came to my apartment yesterday at 8 o'clock in the morning. They knocked on my door. They identified themselves as the Toronto police. I walked over, I looked through the peephole, I saw the police officers there. I locked my door. I walked back into my apartment. I didn't speak to them. I didn't acknowledge that they were even there. I did not interact with them. I didn't refuse to speak to them. I just ignored them completely. Picked up my phone. I called my lawyer. I managed to get a hold of one of my lawyer's associates. I told my lawyer's associate that the police were outside my door and that they had identified themselves, but they had refused to indicate why they were there, and that they had tried to get me to open the door. They drove me over to a psychiatric institution. They took me to the hospital. After having a brief conversation with the psychiatrist ordered the police officers to take the handcuffs off me, and they let me go. Why did they break into my apartment and put me in handcuffs and drag me off? Because of my YouTube channel. A bunch of police officers show up outside my door. They said they had a nurse with them. They tried to get me to talk. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, that they just wanted to talk to me. I heard the word Interpol. I heard the word FBI. I don't tell the cops that I won't talk to them. I just ignore them completely and call my lawyer.
Now, what is more than likely in my head was he's probably sitting there stewing, fomenting, going crazy, maybe even yelling at other tenants in the building. Had the cops called on him for like a health check, and he was taken in an ambulance to a hospital to be evaluated because he's like a crazy person. And that's why I think it is. At the same time, anytime that he has talked about cops coming to his apartment or somebody trying to interact with him, apparently he just has a lawyer on speed dial that he is able to call instantly and have them pick up and say, "Yes, hello, Ian Foote here, going to jail. The police are stomping on my freedoms." And they say, "I got this." And they hang up and it's all solved.
Apparently they got somebody to give them a key because they unlocked my door after unsuccessfully trying to break it down. And they entered my apartment without my consent. They had no warrant. I was on the phone to my lawyer and his associate, and it's a good thing that I was, because they opened the door and they took a step into my apartment, and I was looking right at them. And I'm talking to them, I'm talking to my lawyer, I'm talking to them, I'm talking to my lawyer. What should I do? Excuse me, officer, pardon me for a moment, I'm trying to talk to my lawyer. In the end, I hung up on my lawyer. The cops put handcuffs on me. They said something about a mental health act.
I don't know how that makes any sense because he is broke, lives in what looks like basically Section 8 housing, and has no money. So how does he have a lawyer on retainer at all times for when the cops show up to interact with him? Now, because of all these events and dramas he's had, he wants to get a new lawyer.
And I asked him why, and he said, because they asked me to. So he totally violated my rights. They illegally entered my apartment. I need to find another law firm that specializes in a different area of law, so I can take action against the superintendent of my building for unlocking my door and letting the police into my apartment.
So that he can sue his landlord who let the cops into his apartment, allegedly. So we'll see where that all develops. I'm highly doubtful. You're going to get 2 lawyers on retainer, Ian? Oh, man. I wish I was a 2-lawyer person. That would be sick. It should come as no surprise that Ian has allegedly been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Apparently, his story, or his retelling of the story, was he had to go to court at some point for a discussion about who gets to take care of his daughter or something. His family, his ex-wife, have written confirmation saying that he has schizophrenia. He probably has been diagnosed with it, would be my guess. And they wrote to the judge saying, hey, he did this thing where in his mind the story is, oh, I didn't feed her breakfast one time. I highly doubt that's the actual story. I'm sure there is a much more sinister and dark aspect to the story that we will probably never hear.
So I wake up and I'm lying in bed and I'm doing on the computer, and my daughter wakes up and she's hungry, and I don't have anything. And I mean, it's not like I'm some irresponsible piece of shit, right? Like there was a transit strike. The whole city was in chaos. I had to work remotely from home. Apparently this made a huge impact on her, because my sister, when she wrote her hate-filled, lie-filled letter to the court to try to fucking have me locked up for the rest of my life, talking about what a piece of shit I was, she mentioned that incident in her letter to the court, trying to slander my reputation, and told the police that Ian had schizophrenia. They told the police that he'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was in Halifax, and they told the police that he'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was in Vancouver. And people believe that, because why would they lie?
Basically, he goes on to talk about how one time when he was in jail, he was writing the Fibonacci sequence all over the wall.
Who writes numbers on walls? You see that in movies. I wrote the Fibonacci sequence around the fucking cell. I wrote the prime numbers as high as I could go.
And was writing all the prime numbers all over the wall like some sort of Arkham villain. It just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Does this come off as a crazy person to you? Because it certainly comes off as a crazy person to me. So with this potential diagnosis of schizophrenia, it starts to make sense, all of these outlandish delusions of grandeur that he has spouted about throughout his life, including one of which where he views himself as some pivotal piece that played a role in healing and curing the entire human species, because he probably wasn't even working for the IT department at Pfizer or other medical insurance companies or pharmaceutical companies.
The most influence that I ever had over the fate of the human race, the species. I like the word species. So when I say to you that I met with the CEO and the CTO of Pfizer, I'm not a liar. I'm just streamlining the story. And I paced around my living room to bleed off the anxious energy from this extremely pivotal meeting that was going to touch the lives of the entire species. Thank you.
So in his mind, he thinks that because he might have worked on software that, whatever, sold medicine, provided medicine, prescribed medicine, whatever, that he is some godlike figure that cured and saved everybody and needs a pat on the back. Good for you, Ian. Keep on keeping on, I guess. And at the same time, this shouldn't be surprising, but compounded off of that, he views his role in society as being much more important than it probably was. He keeps talking about how he would, take action. Other people would look around for somebody to take control, and Ian would come take control because he was just such an epic alpha male, baby.
I spent 20 years building command and control systems to empower groups of people devoted to a goal to become successful, to help them to cooperate and collaborate and work together and accomplish more with less resources and less effort. That was my career.
One of the more obvious situations of delusion that I feel like he experienced was he's constantly talking about these things I mentioned with the trolls earlier, that he'll see posts on his feeds on social media that disappear when he starts to try and concentrate or pay attention to them.
Posts were appearing on my Facebook wall, and then they were disappearing. Like somebody was posting shit and then taking it down so that I wouldn't notice it was happening. But this is going out in other people's feeds.
And he feels like somebody's playing a trick on him. I think he is just being fueled by paranoia, and that he's actually seeing nothing, but his mind is playing tricks on him. So on top of all the community gardens and all the IT work that he's done in his life, somehow he found a way to squeeze in being a traveling car salesman, where he allegedly sold junk out of the back of his car. I don't know about that one, Chief.
I took a job as a traveling salesman. Just went around talking to people, selling stuff out of the trunk of my car.
He says he went to college, and he said he went to either Brantford or Brantford College in Canada, and that he was the top student ever. GPA, everything, all the accomplishments are in Ian's name.
When I went to college, I got the highest mark in the history of the school.
I did some really basic research to try and find it. I couldn't really find the college. Maybe it's just really small. And some of the websites I did find didn't really have his name associated with them. So it's up in the air for me. So he wasn't just always a lonely, crazy person who had no friends. He did have friends. He tells a story about one of his friends named Joe Duncan, where he went to go see him after some extended time of not seeing him. Joe became married to some lady, and he went to their house, and Joe wasn't there. So when he showed up, his wife said, "Oh, let's play a prank on him. Let's trick him with something before he shows up."
Joe Duncan is not my friend. He is not my friend. He was my best friend when I was in high school. She played a nasty trick on him to humiliate him, to entertain me. Christine wanted to impress me, so she played a nasty trick on Joe to make him look stupid and foolish. That was my first introduction to his wife. Last time I talked to him, he said I wasn't able to come and visit him at his house because his wife didn't like me. He was talking about how he sleeps in one of the children's bedrooms of his own house, and that she slept in the master bedroom of his house with all of the expensive clothes that he bought for her, because there wasn't enough room for him. That she was in the master bedroom with all the expensive clothes that he bought for her, and he slept by himself in one of the children's rooms. He said something about how they hardly saw each other, that she was working some minimum wage job.
Now, Ian pegs this as being, this is a malicious act, that she is disrespecting her husband. How dare she do that to him? But anybody else would think, oh, we're just trying to spook him. Or maybe it's a surprise. Oh my goodness, Ian's there. It's like, I feel like he way overplayed exactly what was going into this. And he deems this as based on his personality, I feel like he probably overreacted, freaked out, and it scared his wife. So Joe told him later on that his wife didn't like him, and so Ian never really became friends with him again. And he goes on to expound on some of his issues with Joe Duncan, one of which being that he viewed him as a pervert because allegedly Joe had a dinner party with a gay person at some point. Therefore, that makes him perverted, and Ian wasn't allowed to show up for that reason because he would say bad things or something. I don't know. And he also tells this obscure story that when they were in high school, that Ian, being this great mastermind, he's so good with his hands and his mind, he's a genius, that he taught Joe how to pick lock and break into people's houses and hack into computers.
I taught Joe how to pick locks when we were teenagers. And I learned how to pick locks because I thought it was exciting, like something out of a action movie or spy thriller. Has devoted vast amounts of his life to learning how to break into people's fucking houses, how to pick their locks, how to hack past electronic security systems. That's the kind of shit that Joe's into. He's passionate about that, fascinated by that. He has absolutely no respect for anybody. Absolutely no respect for anybody.
That Joe decided to use for evil instead of good, because Ian goes on to explain that he would never use these things in a heinous act against somebody because he's a good person and Joe isn't. Of course, we're reaching Avengers level of storytelling here. When Ian was in college, he poisoned his college buddies for revenge or satisfaction or something because he liked his beer hoppy and they didn't, so they disrespected him or something.
So I added more hops to my beer. I like a bitter beer. I added more hops. And I added more hops. And I added more hops.
I don't know, the story's convoluted, but it becomes like a kid's child story because he gets the gang back together and says, I'll teach you guys how to make beer. And they went on to produce like a bajillion bottles of beer every single week.
Brought beer to poker night on a Wednesday. Which was exactly what I wanted them to do. But I could not let them know that. You can make your beer the way you like it. I will teach you. I will loan you my equipment. You can borrow my floating thermometer. You can borrow my hydrometer. You can borrow my bottle capper. I have to pay 2 pennies a cap for my beer caps, so you'll have to buy your own. There were 14 men, including me, making 70 dozen beer per week.
Going to who? Who knows? But that was a story that definitely happened.
And I found 3 of these. When I found them, sitting on the sidewalk, look, see? I started making some beer with this shit.
He had another friend from high school and grade school named Les, and he really liked Les's mom.
I liked Les's mom. I respected her. She was a good woman.
Because he viewed Les's mom as being more of an ideal/traditional mother than his own, so he had great respect for her. When his father remarried, he had a stepmom who, surprisingly, he did not like. And the main reason that he explains for not liking his stepmom was because she worked for the welfare department inside of the government, and he was convinced that she had overreached with her roles and responsibilities and had too much power.
People would come to her, and she would get to choose. She was a gatekeeper, and she spent her entire life acting in a gatekeeper's position. I've tried not to speculate about the corruption that might have happened, could have happened. I try not to speculate because I don't know, but she's a disagreeable bitch.
And was not seeking to be kind to people, I guess. I don't know. It's whatever. It's Ian at this point.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Ian has a Quora, which hasn't been active since May 10th. Basically, he used it similarly to his Facebook account, where he would just post incessantly, up to 10 times a day, about random nonsense topics. He'd respond to people. He had followers on there. It basically was a sort of diary for him where he could just expound his thoughts until he moved to YouTube. The apartment has sort of built a world of its own where he has this weird studio room with no living space, and you can always see the kitchen right in the back. He's got an extra couch and a chair. His bed is always constantly covered in stuff, and I don't think that he has a fridge or a pantry because his groceries are always either on his bed or on the chair, so he probably doesn't have any storage space to put it anywhere. He also uses his bed as a mouse pad for his computer, which is very, that's very r/shitty gaming setups over there. That's very cool of him. And we've seen some oddities pop in now and then. I mean, we saw previously with his beer addiction, the weird jugs he brought inside. And we've also seen him have a giant suitcase with clothes overflowing out of it, just stacked on his bed. Who knows where he was going or where he was coming from, but the apartment has always had its own little personality since he doesn't leave. It's kind of its own character. Don't say that Satray never taught you anything, because I had no clue what a Freegan was before, and apparently Freeganism is an actual thing. I had no clue. So Ian interacted with these people because his wife Sharon cheated on him with a member of the local Freegans.
But she'd been hanging out with a bunch of losers and bums and vagabonds and pathetic people that squeegee people's windows and eat food out of dumpsters behind grocery stores. Over to where he was. I knew where he was. There was a flop house with 20 people living in it. They called themselves Freegans. They ate garbage out of dumpsters. There were panhandlers. I think some of them were students that were like, this is the cheapest place that I could find to live to save as much money as possible. But most of them were bums or vagrants or losers or addicts, and just, it had like a hippie kind of a vibe going on, but they're eating garbage.
He described them as being like vagrants and kind of like pseudo homeless people that ate garbage and cleaned windshields and scurried like rats when he came a-knocking.
It's like a derelict building, basically, really, in truth. And that was where he was, Mr. Hammock Man. And I walked over there. I wasn't like, I was walked across town to where he was. And she wanted to protect him from me. And she walked beside me. And this was the end of our relationship. And we both knew it.
When he went there to confront the cheater, his wife's mistress or mistress, I don't know what a male version of that is. He went in there and that guy ran away, and some other member inside the house bashed him over with a chair.
Like walking like the Terminator, calmly. And they're panicked animals, darting this way, darting that way, exhausting themselves with their fear. Their fear exhausts them. Their dartingness exhausts them. And I'm just methodically walking. And he fled into the night with no shoes on in the snow, like a coward, running through the snow with no shoes, because she got there a split second ahead of me and warned him I was coming. I went in there to look for him, and one of the guys there saw me as a home invader and broke a chair over my head. And I looked at him calmly, and I thought to myself, you see me as a home invader, you got a bunch of hippie women here, and you feel like you're being protective of your people, and you see me as a threat to them.
But he forgave him because he didn't know any better or something like that. I don't know. But Freeganism, man. Who would have thought? We're learning stuff. Thanks, Ian. At some point in Ian's life, he lived in a house with a thief and a drug dealer, where he slept in the basement with no door. He described it as being sort of like a flop house, but I don't really know where in the timeline this took place. I just thought it was such an oddity.
A mattress and a bedroom with no, a basement room with no fucking door, just a curtain. And I'm sleeping with a coke dealer and a thief. And when I say the guy's a thief, what I mean is, I thought he was a fucking decent enough guy who was working as a security guard, and then he got fired because he was stealing from the people he was hired to protect. Horrible things about me. They fucking came into my room while I was asleep and pissed on my clothes.
How he ended up there, and this is why the whole I'm so skeptical about all the jobs things, is because he should have some sort of nest egg to prevent him from living in these weird situations, but he's got the stories to say, so I have to choose whether or not I believe his jobs or believe these stories, so it makes it a little bit difficult. No, this isn't some shitty story about getting sent to Brazil. Ian's ultimate plan, after his entire life has fallen apart, he doesn't see or know his daughter anymore, all of his relationships are destroyed, the Asian woman keeps trying to get him arrested. His ultimate goal is to move to Brazil and remarry somebody, restart his life, and then go back to Silicon Valley and become a IT hotshot or something. It's a great plan. Follow through with it.
I intended to go to Brazil and try to find myself a Catholic woman to be my wife and have some more kids, buy some land and have a house and create a stable place that my daughter would always be welcome at, and to make myself financially successful. I don't want to live in Canada anymore. I'm going to go to Brazil and have a fresh start down there. And when I get down there, I'll go to California. I'll go to Silicon Valley. I'll find myself some work that I can do remotely that pays US dollars. I'll go to Brazil and I'll suck myself up down there and I'll find myself a wife.
There have been accusations against Ian for having stolen Valor because he has talked about allegedly serving in the Canadian infantry,
Discharged with honor from the military,
but was honorably discharged because of a near fatal car accident. Okay. But he has no proof or verification to back any of this up. He's even talked about how he won't go get his military ID or whatever you want to call it, his military verification, for no specified reason.
I had a conversation with them about their gear and their webbing, because I used to wear webbing when I was in the military. I talked to them about how I received an honorable discharge from the military, about how I was accused of stolen valor, and I was most of the way through the process of applying for my military ID so that I could prove I was a veteran. But I decided to delay filling it out until after I cut my hair and shaved my beard. That I was never remember the military. They're like obsessed with this. This is something that they securely latched on to, like a dog.
And it's kind of confusing to try and piece it into the timeline of where this might have happened. I guess immediately after leaving home at 17, maybe he joined for a little bit and then got hurt. But then he became an EMT at some point, or an ambulance driver or something. And then, like, when did he have time to go to college? And where did he get the money to support himself on his own? There's a bunch of questions out there that I feel like are just not answered at this point, or maybe I'm overlooking them. During one of the times that Ian was incarcerated, apparently he was sent to the hole or the pit or whatever you want to call it, solitary confinement, and the guards just left him there with no light and no food for multiple days, just left to decay.
I should be getting what I estimate, best guess, $80,000 from the government sometime early next year as compensation while arrested and waiting trial. I was thrown into solitary confinement and left there to rot for more than 2 months. And then I went in front of the judge and he let me go. And then I'm part of a class action lawsuit against the government, and I expect to get approximately $80,000. Exercise and eating healthy, things like that. Just spend the first 30 days not going off half-cocked, just sitting on the money, and while I'm working on my health and wellness and getting my body in order and getting my mind in order, I'll spend that time making the plan for what I'll do.
And apparently he's expecting an $80,000 payout from the government, I guess, because he went to the judge and the judge said, let him be free or something. I don't know, man. I don't know. 80K would look pretty nice, though. You get yourself back on your feet. You can move to Brazil, get a new honey. Not a bad idea. Now, this is by far the most interesting story timeline of Ian's entire career. It's also my personal favorite, so I'll try and get it as best as I can. The infamous You Framed Me video is about this chick who he's been stalking, who is a bar owner. Now, he's going to tell the story a little bit differently than I will. I'm going to piece it together to my understanding, and he'll say it how he thinks it is. Obviously, I'm not trusting that story.
They called me a manipulator. They called me a manipulator. And they told people not to open up to me because I'd manipulate them. And then they called me a narcissist who only cares about himself. I wanted to know what you thought. I wanted to know you. I wanted to connect to you. I wanted to have a personal relationship with you. I didn't want to fucking spy on you and research you and do background checks and ask all your friends who you are. I wanted to spend time with you. I wanted to get to know you. I asked questions. I tried to get you to open up to me. That's not what narcissists do. Holding your frame. You framed me. You framed me. You went around talking shit about me behind my back. You made absolutely fucking certain that I would never be able to fucking defend myself. You framed me. You framed me. I was just sitting here and I'm like, I can't make you stop.
His family has been alleging that he groomed this lady to be with him.
Talking about how I groomed some vulnerable young woman. She wasn't 14 years old. She was 28 years old. 28-year-old woman. Has her own fucking place in the basement. Lives with her father. Has the support of a family that are actively interested in helping her to be successful in her business. And every single fucking time that I was with her, she always had at least one employee around.
And he immediately follows that up with planning to buy a $10,000 engagement ring to marry this lady.
They called me a groomer, too. I was trying to give husband vibes. I was actually over at Dundas Mall, at the jewelry store there, looking at engagement rings. I was gonna drop $10,000 on an engagement ring.
He tells all these stories about how she is constantly calling the cops on him, and at the same time he explains that she is the type of woman that he's always been searching for.
I wanted to be with her so bad, and I was terrified that she would call the police on me if I went to see her. I knew that she thought I was a player. I knew that she had head all filled with all this, didn't trust me. She was the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The one that kept calling the cops on me over and over and over again for attempting to communicate. I really loved that little Vietnamese woman. And that little Vietnamese woman with the pink hair that owned the bar, she was the woman that I had been looking my entire life for. I had been looking for her for years.
Now, I mentioned that she owns and operates a bar, and he talked about how he would constantly go to that bar as soon as it would open and spend as much time with her as possible. He'd be taste testing drinks, he'd be complimenting her, he'd be sharing stories with her. It's a great, grand old time. However, it seems like that she viewed him as just a customer, but he imagined a more intimate relationship with her. He thought he was building and forming some sort of courtship with her. But she just saw him as some dude, some regular that showed up and drank at her bar, right?
That little bitch. He made it seem like we didn't have any kind of relationship at all. Like I was just a customer. And then they came to Canada, and she knew Italian and Vietnamese, but she didn't know English. And for an entire year, she went to school, and she couldn't communicate with people. She didn't understand her teachers. She didn't understand her classmates. She had to pick it up by being absorbed in it. But for a long time, she was just completely isolated.
He claims that the reason why she is constantly calling the police on him is because he gave her a Christmas present. However, with these constant veiled warnings that she's going to get the police involved, he still has this need for closure.
The little Vietnamese woman, she was stalking me. I wasn't legally allowed near her because I went to her bar and gave her a Christmas present and wished her a Merry Christmas. I'm so stupid. So stupid. In my head, I thought that I never actually said what I wanted to say. She never heard what I wanted to say and turned me down. And because she never heard what I wanted to say and turned me down, it just felt like I needed to, you know what I mean? Like I never felt like I had the closure, right?
And he makes up these stories about how she's actually stalking him, not vice versa. He'll be in the park and playing his harmonica for all the lovely babes, and she'll just come strolling up, and then he'll try and get away from her and go on the subway, but there she is, hiding her face behind her hands. It seems like a very likely story, if you're asking me.
And then she was frightened of me. And I saw her across the street, watching me, and she comes over and lays down on the grass beside me. I'm not within 500 meters of her. She's supposedly frightened of me, lays down on the grass beside me. I see her there, and there was a part of me that wanted to communicate, but I knew that if I stood up and walked over and made a conversation with her, and somebody recorded me with a cell phone, instantly I was going to go to jail. Instantly. I went down across the park and went over to the bus stop, and I'm standing at the bus stop, and she follows me out of the park, across the street, down the sidewalk, walks past me looking at me like this.
And he wanted to take her out to go out to a nice steak restaurant for his birthday, but instead he got arrested.
I'm going to ask her to have dinner with me on my birthday, and if she says yes, I'm going to take her to a Brazilian steakhouse. We'll have a good time. Drink, eat some good food, watch some live entertainment, see what happens. I'm going to ask another pretty girl. I'm just going to walk down the street. The first pretty girl I see, I'm going to ask her if I can take her out for dinner and drinks because it's my birthday and I like to have dinner with a pretty girl on my birthday. And I just keep asking pretty girls until someone says yes. That's what I'm thinking in my head. Cops show up, tear up like a rotator cuff, drag me off to the police station, spend my birthday in jail, lost my new job.
And so it seems like he was an overly attached and overly obsessed customer who she got a restraining order on, or maybe trespassed him or something, and he still has this delusion that she's in love with him and he's in love with her, and so he constantly goes back to interact with her, and it has only gotten worse. Now he is imagining that she is contacting him through Facebook to rekindle a relationship with him.
She told me that she wanted to continue to have a relationship with me on Facebook. But she didn't want me to come back to the bar until she had given me permission.
but she won't tell him when he can come back and see her. Instead, he just has to wait patiently. And obviously, I mentioned the delusions before of seeing things online. I think this entire saga is exactly that. I think it's all in his head. I think this woman's probably real, and she probably did have communication with the cops about trespassing or whatever, and he just can't interact with her anymore, but he just can't get it through his head. It is the most interesting story that we have just enough information to wet your lips, but not enough to really savor it. It's like you want to know so much more, but you can't.
Then when I got to Texas, buy a bunch of guns, and come back up here to Canada. I'm the kind of guy that will look you in the eyes and shoot you in the face, and then eat breakfast. Do you understand?
In one of his videos, he talked about his dreams and aspirations for life, and by far the most intriguing aspect of it was that he wanted to operate a hippie artist commune where they can all come together and enjoy nature on his land and make art. He wanted to create a forest that they would put cottages in, that artists could rent out and they could work and create and dance and sing and do everything with him.
I wanted to build a house. I wanted to build a food forest, a perennial forest ecosystem composed entirely of food-bearing plants on my land. I wanted to have a bunch of children and have a little cottage here and a little cottage there and a little cottage here and a little cottage there, so that artists, creative type people, painters, musicians, sculptors, writers, poets could come to get away from the hustle and bustle and the craziness of the city and go to a tranquil place where they could be in a beautiful natural environment.
He also wanted to give back to the community by employing elderly people who could pick the fruit of the forest at their own leisurely pace to then give back to the community and either sell or give to a food bank or something. It's a very admirable dream. It's just not a plausible one. It is kind of cuckoo.
Pick a bunch of it, put it in a basket, ship it off to market. And I wanted to hire elderly people to do that for me. Elderly, retired people. Young people aren't going to want to do that. And I didn't want to ship in immigrants from other countries. I wanted to hire elderly people. Just come to our place, wander around at your own pace in the peaceful tranquility and the beauty of nature, and just pick at your own pace.
The last subject of this video is the discussion of the transcript. He is constantly alluding to getting this court transcript that confirms that he doesn't have schizophrenia. I don't believe that day will ever come.
This is my daughter's mother, Selena. I'm going to get my hands on a copy of the court transcript. I'm going to read out the court transcript. The part where the judge critically examined my character and determined that I was an exemplary father. I started taking steps to get my hands on the transcript that clearly demonstrates that my family lied, that there was an active conspiracy.
I don't even know if it even exists. It's hard to believe anything that Ian says. Maybe some of you in the comments are sitting there and saying, oh my goodness, Saturated, you fell for the mental illness hook, line, and sinker. This guy's just a normal dude who's been beaten down by society. And if it's just a normal dude beaten down by society, then my next comment would be, well, he's a pretty pathetic dude who has made no effort in reforming himself in life and instead exerted all of this resentment he's built up on everybody else instead of looking intrinsically. And so I do think he has a mental illness. I do think he's going crazy. And the reason why, once again, that I'm calling this the making of Horrorcow is because I'm afraid of what the next steps look like, because it seems like his psychosis is getting much worse, and who knows what the next step could lead to. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this. You made it very far if you've made it to the end, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
And it was just like a totally silent moment. I was just looking down upon my loved ones at Christmas time. And I was what I wanted to be. I was a patriarch.